Hi, this is John Fia. I'm the chair of the history department here at Messiah College, and I thought we would try a little bit of a video experiment here. We're going to call these things John Fia's virtual office hours. This semester I'm teaching a course called Historical Methods. We have about 14 or 15 students who are really diving into what it means to be a historian, what it's like to think like a historian, how to do historical research. So I thought we'd start off sharing some of the things that we're doing in those classes and sort of walk you through the semester, and then maybe as time goes on, over the next couple months, we'll do some other things about what's happening here in the history department at Messiah College. We have some guest lecturers coming, maybe we can get them on tape and so forth. But I'm here, as you can see in front of me, I have my 5 founding father Pez dispensers here to keep me company. We got Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe. So some of you know I've done some writing on the religious lives of the founding fathers. So they're here to keep me company. These Pez dispensers. Our first class in historical methods, or at least we spent the first several days of class going over research methodology, databases, how to do historical research. But then we started picking up into some heavy reading about historical methodology, historical method. We started off by having a really interesting conversation about the difference between the past and history. And what I did was I asked the students to watch this classic clip from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, in which Ben Stein, playing the economics teacher, gives an economic history lesson. So watch this clip, and then we'll come back and talk about it in a second.
In 1930, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of the, anyone? The Great Depression, passed the, anyone? A tariff bill, the Hawley Smoot Tariff Act, which, anyone raised or lowered? Raised tariffs in an effort to collect more revenue for the federal government. Did it work? Anyone? Anyone know the effects? It did not work, and the United States sank deeper into the Great Depression. Today, we have a similar debate over this. Anyone know what this is, class? Anyone? Anyone? Anyone seen this before? The Laffer curve. Anyone know what this says? It says that at this point on the revenue curve, you will get exactly the same amount of revenue as at this point. This is very controversial. Does anyone know what Vice President Bush called this in 1980? Anyone? Something DOO economics. Voodoo economics.
Now, one of the things that I asked my students was, is history happening in this clip? There's a lot of facts. We learn about these Hawley Smoot Tariff Act and voodoo economics, but is history happening? And we got into a really, really interesting conversation in class about the difference between history and the past. The past is always there. The past is always with us. We know, for example, that the Declaration of Independence happened on July 4, 1776, or that Islamic terrorists hit the World Trade Center and the Pentagon on September 11, 2001. But the historian is someone who is then going to interpret those facts. The historian's job is to take the past and resurrect the past, interpret the past, and then present the past to a larger audience, whether it be in a book, in a classroom, in an exhibit of some type. So again, that's the premise that we begin. So the question that we begin to ask is, how do historians think? Is there a unique way in which historians engage the world? And I think there is. I think there are certain skills of historical thinking that all historians have to adopt. And I referred to them, I think, in class as sort of arrows in our historical quiver, if you will, for historians. My favorite sort of way of explaining these historical thinking skills, as we call them, is through what a couple of historians named Thomas Andrew and Flannery Burke called the 5 C's of historical thinking. Now, the 5 C's of historical thinking, let's run them off real quickly, and then we'll talk briefly about each one of them. Change over time, context, causality, contingency, and complexity. Let's try to break these down really quickly here. Historians are really interested in understanding change over time. I think it was the historian Gordon Wood, and we read his book, and we read his chapter on chapter 1 of his book, The Purpose of the Past, in this first day of class. Gordon Wood says that historians must trace the development of a particular event or movement or country from point A to point B, with point B always being closer to the present. So change over time, and this is what another one of our writers, John Tosh, in the textbook we read, his introduction to history, John Tosh talks about this as process. Ultimately, historical thinking is a progressive type of thinking. It's moving through time from point A to point B, with point B always being closer to the present. So it's very difficult for a historian then, or it's not good historical thinking for a historian to jump from, say, the 18th century to the present without seeing all of the changes that took place in American life in the time in between. Next, historians are interested in context. Now, anyone who interprets a document, can't just pull quotes out of documents and use those quotes to represent a person's beliefs or a time period. They must understand those ideas in context with other ideas and with the other thoughts of a particular writer. So when we're reading a text as historians, we want to, we want to look at anything the particular author of that text says in context with the other things that he or she has said. But even more than that, historians study the past in context. They look at events in the larger world in which those events happened. If you're studying the American founding, for example, you want to make sure that you understand the founding in the larger context of the 18th century, the political developments, the intellectual developments of the 18th century. So context is going to be very, very important for this process of historical thinking. Next, causality. I think it was the conservative radio host Rush Limbaugh during the height of the 1990s National History Standards who said, I'll tell you what history is, he said. History is the facts. That's it. If you want to say why the facts happened or happened in the way that they did, that's fine too, but history is the facts. Well, yes or no? Yes and no. The facts are building blocks for the study of history. You need to have some knowledge of the facts, a foundational knowledge of what happened. But historians are also interested in why what happened, the causes of things. And sometimes these causes can be very, very complex and difficult to nail down. But if history is more than just the facts, but rather competing perceptions of the past, you're going to have different historians who uncover different evidence or have a different point of view, and they are going to offer different causes for, say, the American Revolution or the Civil War. And that's when history gets fun, because then you begin to debate, whose causes best represent or whose interpretations best represent the evidence. So history is always looking for the ways in which acts or events are caused by social or political or intellectual or religious or economic forces. The fourth C, historians call contingency. And in some ways this is the most complicated. At a very basic level, contingency means that all events are contingent upon other events. In other words, human history is just that. It is the story of humans acting in time, and the decisions and the choices that historians make are going to have effects on the choices and decisions that, the choices and decisions that humans in the past make are going to have some effect on the choices that other human beings in the past make. They're contingent upon one another. So rather than seeing history as some kind of driven by fate or the providence of God or some overarching category that goes against the notion of human free will, We as historians are interested in studying human beings and the decisions and the choices that they make, and how then those choices affect movements, events, other choices that are going to come down the road. These choices are all contingent upon one another. And then the final C we like to call complexity. History is complex. All of us are human beings. All of us are complex human beings. No one likes to be put in a box. No one likes to be categorized. Often you hear someone will say, in an argument, you don't know me. I'm much more complicated or complex than that. Well, if all human beings, if we're all complex people, then of course the study of the past is complex, and we're going to encounter people that are complicated and nuanced individuals. I always like to bring up the example of this guy right here, Thomas Jefferson. What a complex individual, perhaps the most complex of all the founding fathers. Here's a guy who can write in the Declaration of Independence that we are all created equal. We all have individual or natural rights, and at the same time own slaves. And many of the founding fathers are complex in this way. So it's hard to just sort of heroically say, this person is good, this person is great, this person is my hero, without understanding that all of us are also flawed and thus complex human beings. So 5 C's, I think. And again, if you can ingrain these ways of thinking into your daily lives, it really provides a way of understanding the world that I think is uniquely historical, and as maybe we'll see in some of these in some of the tapes that we do later on, is also very useful, I think, to being good citizens and good members of society. So thanks for listening. We will be back hopefully next week with another edition of John Fia's Virtual Office Hours. See you then.